Hello and welcome to Box Score Network YouTube channel. I'm Simon Short. Joining me tonight is Ben Parker. We're floating the name Press Box. This is the Press Box video series. I don't know, Ben. Exciting things are happening. Derek Carr is retired from the NFL. The New Orleans Saints are new once again. How are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing great. Thank you everybody for joining us. Always excited to talk about anything NFL, especially off-season NFL stuff, and always excited to be with you, Simon.
You as well, Ben. And listen, there's nobody that needs to come on at 11 p.m. Eastern time on a Saturday to talk New Orleans Saints football more than you and me.
Yes.
Um, because for the first time since 2005, the Saints enter an NFL season without Sean Payton or Payton disciple as their head coach. And in the draft this year, for the first time since 1971, they used a first or second round pick on a quarterback. And now that guy not only is on the team, but he's looking like he's going to play. Tyler Shough, the 40th overall pick, second round, looks like he's in line to play for the New Orleans Saints this year, sooner not later, with the news of Derek Carr retiring from the NFL. I just said that like Charles Barkley retiring from the NFL. A quick rundown on Carr and his career accomplishments, which should not be understated. As a second round pick quarterback himself, Ben, it's certainly a dying breed. And an 11-year career, four-time Pro Bowler, 41,000 passing yards, 257 touchdowns, was third in MVP voting in 2016. Um, Multiple seasons leading the league in passing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage. Just a starting level, productive, above average quarterback for a long time. Coming from the second round, where Ben, I hypothesized we might see multiple second round quarterbacks this season and look like they'd be in real situations, and that was not the case. So another year goes by. These second round quarterbacks are harder and harder to find. The Saints hope they found another one here. But just comment on Derek Carr, his retirement, and what do you think that means for just what do you think about Carr and what do you think that might mean for the Saints?
I enjoyed watching him, and I always felt like he was a good quarterback, depending on, the season plus minus, but the production was there. You look at year in and year out, usually he was sitting around 4,000 yards, give or take a couple of hundred, right? So while it wasn't, usually MVP level production, the production was there. Usually the touchdowns were there. Sometimes the interceptions were also present, unfortunately. But he kept the teams competitive that he was on, and he wasn't always on the greatest of rosters. So depending on the year and the roster that he was with, that might range from a little under 500, a little over 500, then a couple of outstanding seasons. But I always was on the higher end of the spectrum for Carr, while still admitting that when you watched his talent and what you thought maybe his arm strength was capable of, you kind of a lot of seasons wanted a little bit more than what you got out of him. But I really enjoyed his work overall, just from a production standpoint. Really gave every team he was on a chance, and that's why, man, why he was starting for so darn long, right? I mean, for two different franchises. Lots of people in every single season were like, well, he's just not, top 10, top eight kind of a guy, which is probably the truth in most of those seasons. But man, he gave you a chance to compete every single Sunday against a lot of really good quarterbacks.
I've talked about doing this with you before, and that 2018 season
Yeah.
where he takes the career high 51 sacks really feels like the game changer of his career. It's the first year off of his rookie contract, going into 2019 there. But Donald Penn, the great left tackle, leaves the Raiders, and they draft Colton Miller. But then slowly that offensive line starts to turn over year by year, one guy at a time, one guy at a time. And I think that's where he started to get the narrative after that 51 sack season of like, that guy's just trying to get rid of the ball. Like he'll throw it out of bounds. He'll hit the check down a little too early. He won't be the run and gun guy that he was early in his career. And I even said to you before we started recording, feels like there's a year other than 2024 where he was really injured and there wasn't. I mean, 10 years of no fewer than 15 games started and played for Derek Carr. Like that's again, like we you don't take these things for granted, man. Just having this like steady, consistent performer. This is another 2014 class retirement, Ben. We just did last year on the Simon and Friends podcast. We did a redraft of that class after Aaron Donald retires, and we had the question about like Derek Carr, like where does 10 years of just above average quarterback play? How high would you take that in the draft? I think we ended up taking him in the top five, top six or so. So. A really good career for Derek Carr. And in a world where guys are reversing retirements more and more than they ever did, because listen, the news that's kind of coming out of this was he had that shoulder injury that pre-draft kind of seemed like it came up. And my hypothesis was he found out they were going to draft a quarterback. So he said, well, maybe
Right.
I'll get surgery and sit out the year. He came out and said that wasn't a thing. Like he's trying to play this year. But then the news from today was coming out of talking to doctors and second opinions and thinking about it and talking with the team and everything. He would have to have surgery on this shoulder to play. And the surgery would basically knock him out for the whole season. And he didn't want to do that. But if he was going to stay and make the $30 million that got restructured for his contract this year, he was going to have the surgery. That was part of, I don't know if it's part of the agreement or part of just like this is the physical plan that, the team doctors are recommending or all these people are saying, as opposed to just rehab and rest or whatever he wanted to do. But yeah, so he had this shoulder injury. They draft Shough. He needs surgery to play, but he's not going to take it. He doesn't want to sit down and recover a whole year while this rookie's going to play anyways. So he is retiring for this season, and we will see what the future brings for Derek Carr. But the main point of this video, Ben, the main reason I want to bring you here is we've waited for years for when are the Saints going to change what they do, always operating in the red, always handing out the void years, always handing out restructures to everybody on the team. Well, now we're looking down the barrel, Ben, and it doesn't look as bad as we thought it was when the comeuppance was going to come. Derek Carr,
Right.
I mentioned the $30 million restructure. Jason Fitzgerald on Over the Cap wrote a piece today saying, with the way and the timing of the restructure that happened, and then what was due when of certain places, I won't get into the minutia of it, but basically Carr's dead cap hit should be about 36.5 million in 2026. And that's about half of what his cap hit was going to be if he was playing and under contract. And if you project forward an additional 8% cap raise, which is the expected for the salary cap next year, the Saints are going to be right about cap compliant without doing anything else on this roster. And by the way, here are their list of free agents and voided contracts that are coming. So it's going to be a major roster overhaul. Alontae Taylor and Trevor Penning are free agents. Penning had his fifth year option declined. Voided contracts, guys who are technically being paid by the team, but not under contract to play for the Saints in 2026. Taysom Hill, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Foster Moreau, Rashid Shaheed. And then all of these guys are in the last year of their current contract in 2026. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks. That's a lot of names. And a lot of the dudes that have been getting those restructures, extensions, void years. Ben, are we looking at a chance that all of this dark voodoo magic by Mickey Loomis is out the door after 2026?
I, I'm going to say yes and no at the same time. So here's my thought, and I alluded to it. Well, I didn't allude to it. I said it right out before we did the show with you. The same decision makers are in place, right? It's Mickey Loomis, and Jeff Ireland still has a pretty influential voice in that room too, right? But it's Mickey Loomis. Those decision makers haven't changed, so they aren't going to necessarily, I don't think, plan to just change the way they like to operate. Now, without that huge quarterback contract sitting there, they probably just don't have the need to operate the way they have the past couple of seasons. That they're not working around that huge cap figure. So for the next couple of years, it may alleviate that. And like you mentioned, with so many players that are on the voided contracts, where they can already kind of take the hit next year or the year after, and then just move on. You may see them do things differently without even necessarily game planning differently, right? So when you also have the new head coach coming in and brand new quarterbacks coming in, um, sometimes that also can lead to more change. Ultimately, though, I figure 2, 3, 4 years from now, we're probably in the same kind of spot because the decision makers haven't changed and they don't usually really change their thinking. But yeah, for the next couple of seasons, I do think you are going to see the the way they do things is going to be different because they can, not necessarily because they change the way they like to do things.
Yeah, just because these faces are out the door finally, right? Doesn't mean they won't turn around and do this with Chase Young when his contract is up in 3 years, or Jawan Johnson when his is up in two, or Kamara when
Right.
his is up in one. It could certainly keep happening, but I do think, yeah, it all depends on how good the team is. Because, when Sean Payton's your coach and Drew Brees is your quarterback, you have that monster 2017 draft that revitalizes the franchise. You're like, well, we got to keep this thing going. So we got to tide over these veterans who were here pre 2017 and use this 2017 class to kind of fill in behind them. So yeah, let's start paying Lattimore and Jordan and Jimmy Graham and all the Michael Thomas, all these guys, whatever it takes, however it takes. I mean, Kellen Moore comes from Philadelphia. Not that he's going to be bringing in any cap ideas, but Jeffrey Lurie just pays everybody and pays them up front and gets out in front of it and small cap hits, yada yada. Kellen Moore also comes from Dallas, where they wait forever to pay a guy and then they just pay him anyways. What so
Yeah.
Kellen Moore's not going to bring any cap ideas or anything. So yeah, it's all in house. And Mickey Loomis didn't go anywhere. He is still around, but Shuck's pro comp is Derek Carr, which is pretty funny. So is he just gonna like be just now? I say that the Derek Carr years in New Orleans didn't exactly go great. So are they gonna learn that lesson of okay, we need a Drew Brees level quarterback to start doing this stuff again? Um, and I don't know if Kellen Moore is getting Tyler Shuck to that level. We haven't really talked about this since the draft. What do you think about Shuck on the Saints? And now especially where do you think he's going to be the week one starter? What do you think this looks like for New Orleans?
I'm curious to see where you land on this. If I had to project right now, I would guess that Shough is waiting in the wings come week one with Spencer Rattler as the
Mm,
week one starter. And again, the only idea for that is hey, we've got a guy who's already gotten some NFL snaps last year.
hmm
So let's ease the young guy in here. But no matter which guy plays quarterback, let's go with Tyler Shough here. I like him on the Saints because Kellen Moore has proven himself to be not a brilliant offensive coordinator, but a stabilizing offensive coordinator who's willing to kind of work things out based on what he's got, right? But even better than that, you've got a lot of things on this offensive side of the football that will benefit any young quarterback that steps in, whether that's Spencer Rattler or even Jake Hayner or Tyler Shough, whoever it is, because you've got the tight ends, including Taysom Hill, who can do all kinds of different helpful things to young
hmm
quarterbacks.
hmm
You've got the wide receiving core, who's not brilliant, but it does work between Chris Olave and Brandon Cooks. There are guys there, and if Shaheed comes back healthy, you've
Yep.
got the deep threat. And then you've got the offensive line that they just keep investing in, which is not a
hmm
brilliant offensive line, but it's a workable offensive line. And, being that young, it can improve. So there's a lot of things here that would help a young quarterback. So whenever I am convinced Tyler Shough gets on the field this year, is that week 4? I don't know. He's getting on the field. There's no
Right.
question about that.
Yep. I do think it's going to be week one. I was starting to think I was kind of where you were at a couple hours ago. And maybe if it was still Dennis Allen or just it was whatever Kubiak was in the building, I forget at this point. But if it was somebody, if it was Saintsy and it was just whoever was next up in the organization, I was like, yeah, you were the quarterback, for a good bit last year. We'll just. But Kellen Moore's coming in again. I'm looking for this to be a fresh start for the Saints, and I think you convinced me that it's
Yeah.
not going to be financially. It just might be a delayed reset, right? Where they kind of
Right.
finally let the cap settle. They let all those guys go and off into their void years and don't try to add stuff on top of it. Um, but then, I have a list of building blocks I'm going to ask you about later, but they eventually just do the same things financially with those guys. But I do think it's going to be Shuck week one because the main thing for me with Shuck on the college tape was that foot scatteredness, right? Just like not being very comfortable in the pocket. But you mentioned this investment in the offensive line.
Yeah.
Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, Telis Fuaga, who had a good year. Kelvin Banks was a top 10 draft pick. Trevor Penning is what he is, or Nick Salvaretti, the ODU guard, but whoever ends up being the fifth starter in that group. I think they're going to have a stout enough offensive line. They proved that last year when they were healthy, they were good. So if they can be healthy and Shuck can walk in with a good offensive line and they can work that with Alvin Kamara, I think that'll work. I think that can work fine. And at that point, like hit the ground running. Because Shuck, even though doesn't have a lot of playing experience as a 26-year-old or whatever he is, he's 26 years old, man. You haven't drafted a quarterback this high in 50 years. I almost said 30 years. In 50 some years. This is the guy they want. So, yeah, you don't want to rush into a bad situation, but I the more I think about it, the more I think Kellen Moore's just going to want to walk in week one with his guy.
And whenever that happens, and I didn't even mention the most important cog, and you did, that's Alvin Kamara, who, listen, he can run the football very well, but you talk about a guy that they just throw the football to a lot, man. I mean,
Right.
he gets
Exactly.
almost as many yards catching as he does running, really. So, boy, you talk about bringing in a young quarterback who, with what we said, the respectable offensive line, but with a running back that you can just constantly throw to and get
Hmm.
yards on, right? It's not dump off for 3 yards. You consistently get shortened chains,
Yep.
and you got the tight ends and the wide receivers. I think it's a good setup for Shough whenever he does come in. So whether that's week 1, week 4, I do think it's a great setup. Yeah, it's not as brilliant as what you're getting up in Minnesota, right, with O'Connell and with Jefferson.
Right.
But
Hmm.
next level down, I think, boy, if he can't succeed here, I don't know where he would succeed, to be honest.
Yeah, this was the place that felt like it was the right place for him and the place that wanted him
Mm-hmm.
specifically, which is
Right.
even more important in a lot of ways. Like they want him and they want to make it work. Um, and yeah, whenever it happens, I mean, I think I as of right now, ask me in 2 weeks, ask me in a month, ask me in August, who I think will be the week one star. But whenever it happens, I'm starting to kind of come off the train of like your rookie has to start week one because I mean he's not even a first round pick anyway. So there's a reason he's picked 40 and not pick four, right? So it
Yeah.
wouldn't be bad to let Rattler get behind this offensive line as they kind of work through some chemistry things early in the season, or maybe if Shaheed isn't back yet, you want a full complement of wide receivers to go to, something along those lines. We mentioned a couple of young guys here on the offense. Here are the building blocks we currently have. I mentioned all the voided contract guys, all the last year of their contract guys. So if you're looking at beyond 2026, guys that are like reasonably younger in their prime and under contract for 2027 and or beyond, you have Shough. You have most of that offensive line, Fuaga, Ruiz, McCoy, Banks, who I mentioned. Juwan Johnson, the tight end, is got that extension. He'll still be around maybe. Devin Neal is the running back, Kansas. Alvin Kamara, like I said, in the last year of his deal. Chase Young got that contract. Brian Brzee, you're hoping gets an extension, becomes a extension, not reliable, but a guy that deserves one, extension deserving one. Pete Warner, the linebacker, and then corners. You're looking at maybe a Kool-Aid McKinstry and Quincy Riley as your outside corners. What do you think about this as a potential foundation starting point for where this like new look Saints team could be in 2 years?
Let me go optimistic because I'm so often trying to be realistic. I come across as Mr. Negative, right? So let me try to take this down a positive track here. On offense, I really like it. I do feel like they are set up here without stretching things, right? Without hoping that everybody maxes out. Just realistically, it feels like they're set up here on offense for the next couple of years to really be solid. And all you need is one of these young quarterbacks, preferably Shough, to actually just be decent. You've got a good young wide receiving core. Kamara probably for another year or two, depending on when you want to do the finances. But if not him, Devin Neal, and then the offensive line that you mentioned there, and of course the tight ends that they're working with. So it feels like you've got plenty of youth there, and they're all showing enough already that you feel like we can be solid for the next couple of years, especially if Kellen Moore can do it. I feel a little less like that on defense because I just feel like the defensive guys haven't yet shown as much as this
Right.
offensive group
Hmm.
has, and there aren't as many of them. There's a lot more young guys on offense than there are defense, and the ones on offense have shown more than they have on defense. But still, in an ideal world, what I would want the Saints to do is let all these void-yeared contract guys go. Just let them go. Keep one, right? Let the rest go. Keep the one you like the best. Let the rest go. You've got the offense basically in place that you can work with for the next year or two under Kellen Moore. And now the money is going to have to go into that offensive line because if those guys are hitting over the next
Yep.
year or two, you'll have to start
Hmm.
paying them. But now you turn around and you continue using the draft picks on the defensive side of the football, maybe 67% of the picks. So I think there's a workable plan here. I hope they do it. We'll see.
Do you think do you think Chris Olave gets a long-term deal? Because I didn't put him in that long-term building blocks. 2026 is his fifth year option year. We'll see if he gets an extension between now and then. Um, with the injuries and of the concussion variety, obviously, and just the like, the slighter build wide receiver hasn't fully popped off because of the injuries and stuff. Do you think Olave is in the long-term plans for this team?
Knowing Ireland and Loomis, I would say yes. And honestly, if it were me, I would probably do it because I don't think, and I could be wrong, I don't think him and his agent are going to be so delusional as to be asking for
Mm.
upwards of high 20s, 30, $32 million type stuff. I think they're going to be much more realistic. And I didn't research where the guys at his bracket would end up. But, if it's at 20 ish a year, 22, I'd be interested, as long as we're not looking at 5 years with three guaranteed, right? If it were more like a 3 year deal with two guaranteed, I'd be interested instead of trying to hit reset there at the wide receiver because it's not like they have tons of wide receivers to operate with anyway. So I'd be interested and knowing the front office there, I would say yes. So
Yeah, Chris Godwin just got the 3 year, $66 million, so 22 a year. Um, and he's a little older as a third contract player, but considering the injuries and such, that might be fair. And then you adjust for inflation, so somewhere in that maybe 2025-ish, which in 2 years, it's probably not even going to be top 15 wide receiver money. So, and yeah, it's a position that they haven't really hit on, otherwise. So they're going to need to do that. But they have some foundational pieces here. They've got some corners, offensive line. They hopefully have a quarterback. You get a real splash edge rusher, another splash pass catcher, and you might feel pretty good where they're at over the next couple seasons. Draft picks, I double checked. They have 7 picks for next year projected. They don't have their seventh round pick. They traded that for Davon Godchaux, but they have a projected fourth round comp pick coming to them next year. So they should have a full complement of picks to work with as they continue to build out this roster. Ben, anything else for you on the Saints, on Derek Carr, Kellen Moore, anything else with this franchise?
yeah, I've tried to be optimistic to some degree here tonight. It's it's never easy, right? In the NFL, it's super competitive. The division that they're working in is one of the lesser divisions, but still
Yep.
not an easy one. It's just not easy to just roll out there. You've got young quarterbacks in this division too. You've got other guys whose jobs are on the line. It's not going to be easy, even with kind of the financial break that you're getting here, to just kind of roll over and step up and do any more than compete. So I like what they have the potential to do here, but boy, they really need Kellen Moore a lot here. They need Kellen Moore to really step up what they've been getting at the head coaching spot here, um, and get them into the playoffs and develop this young quarterback. If he can do those kinds of things, everything else just kind of falls into place because
Yeah.
they're not terrible at roster building. They just haven't proven brilliant at it either.
Yeah, the long-term building blocks, the same names can look a lot better or a lot worse depending on the head
Right.
coach and the quarterback for sure. So while it is very exciting to see a brand new head coach and a brand new quarterback for the New Orleans Saints this year, whether or not it will actually be better or helpful or good for the franchise is TBD. But we will be with you every step of the way between now and the regular season as we get more off-season content going here in the summertime. Do not go anywhere. And then make sure you are back and subscribed and liking all the videos and checking out the pods for all of our preseason content in August. But like I said, we are not going away, Ben. We're not leaving. We're not leaving. Thank you all so much for watching. Calling this a press box for right now, and we'll see how. Give us a comment on how you like the press box for these reaction videos. But thank you all so much. We will talk to you soon. Have a good one.